Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AMT Tech Trends Podcast, where we discuss the latest manufacturing technology research and news. I am the Director of Technology, Benjamin Moses, and I'm here with
Stephen Lamarca, Technology Analyst.
Steve. Welcome back from IMTS.
Thank you. You welcome back.
Thanks. I was just thinking about that because right after IMTS, I turned everything around and went down to Georgia Tech for a quick trip.
God bless you. I love how you do that. Like, you get right back into the swing of things. And you simultaneously at IMTS, you were like, you told me, Steve, next week, work from home. And then, like, in the same conversation, I'm like, hey, I also want to take the week off after that. But yeah, so like I'm just getting back into the swing of things 2 weeks later, and you went right into another trip.
I went right into another trip. So one of our members is working with a couple of universities to start up an industry university corporate cooperative research center. So these are areas where they work together with industry and university to develop new technologies. And a lot of it comes from NSF funding. So NSF has a full channel to set up these IUCRCs, and the topic that they're working on is Center for Digital Factory Innovation. So if you look at the list on NSF, this is probably one of the gaps in the manufacturing sector. So it was really cool to go down to Georgia Tech and work with them on the first workshop that they have to walk through the process.
Love visiting them.
So it was fun. I flew back Sunday, and then I think I flew out Tuesday. So quick turn on for all my suits at the dry cleaning.
That's incredible.
I made sure I went to Zips, dropped it off like 8 o'clock in the morning.
Is everything okay? Any puckering?
No puckering. Since I was at Georgia Tech, it's in Atlanta, which is 1,000 degrees warmer than it was in Chicago. So I love the suits that I wore down there. Again, I was sweating a lot.
Yeah.
So I didn't dry clean those suits right away. So I'm going to wait a little bit. I want a little Febreze
That's
to
smart.
spray on the suits.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So my wife was making fun of me about not dry cleaning those right away. But I was like, these suits need to last me.
Right.
So I'd rather.
So that's like the thing. A lot of people don't realize that like suits are fragile. Like the only way you can clean them is dry cleaning. But if you dry clean them too much, eventually you get that puckering that you see around the shoulders.
The puckering.
It's most popular. Well, it's most common around the shoulders.
Yep.
When you dry clean them too much. But
and you get a little bubbling also.
yeah,
The bubbling.
you can't get bubbling. That's in a fused canvas suit.
Yeah.
But that is this conversation is for a different podcast. One titled "Smoking Tweed, Sons of Britches."
That's pretty good.
It's my fashion podcast.
I know you had a positive time during IMTS. We had a great time, but
Yes.
you came down on a little bit of a lull afterwards.
Yeah, so it's always because like you end up getting physically fatigued
Right.
before you get mentally fatigued.
Sure.
And I think that's common across everybody. And it's disappointing and depressing even because, it's happens as early as Thursday. Fortunately, it didn't happen until Thursday with me.
Yeah.
In the past, it's happened as early as like Wednesday morning. But like Thursday afternoon, when my schedule was cleared, finally, like when I had done everything that I needed to do on Thursday, I wanted to go walk around the rest of the show, the part of the shows that I haven't seen. I wanted to go visit with all of the fellow influencers that I feel terrible because I didn't get a chance to like really meet any of them.
Sure.
There was a few that I met, and I finally got to meet Alex Kingsbury and work with her in person. That was great.
Yep.
But again, that was work. We had to. I wanted to get a chance to meet Megan and Drew Crow, some personal heroes of mine.
Sure.
But that was disappointing. Just in a lot of like the end of IMTS, the IMTS aftermath depression comes from being physically fatigued before you're mentally fatigued. And it is mentally draining going to that. But because it's just such a big show, you get really worn out. But I was talking about, this end of show depression that comes on. Because like 2016 was my first show.
Right.
And I was like, man, I really wish it was 2 weeks and not just 1 week. And a lot of people told me why that it's a good thing that's not 2 weeks.
Right.
Because a lot of exhibitors, as much as they love IMTS and as much as good a business it does for them, it's draining on all of their draining on financials. Like, sure, you make close big deals while there, but it costs a lot of money to be there. Anyway, that was just crossed out real quick. But like every IMTS, I've always gotten some sort of like FOMO that I didn't see the whole show.
Oh, sure.
Fear of missing out. Right. And I genuinely, this show I feel like I saw the most. Even though I didn't get to meet as many people as I wanted, still got to meet a ton. This was my most successful show yet, and the most successful show yet, which was really awesome. But I was talking with Mo over in Marcom, and she was like, because Marcom especially, they are all hands on deck 9 months before the show,
right.
And like pulling their hair out and getting gray hairs. As early as like a year out,
sure.
Like prepping for IMTS. And when it finally comes to fruition and the show closes and it's over, you'd think you'd get like this sense of relief. And I get a sense of relief. I know you get a sense of relief, right. But like the way she described it, and I never realized it, but we totally experienced this, is like a postpartum depression.
Oh,
there's
sure.
definitely a postpartum depression to the end of IMTS.
Okay.
And, I'm glad I'm not the only one that feels that way. Because, you do get, did I see everything?
Yeah.
I know this time, I saw everything that I needed to see. Right. I didn't see everything, but I'm sure there's some great things that I did miss. But I got my fill. I wish I had talked to more people.
Sure.
That I felt terrible about, but that was just physical fatigue. I never got to shake the hands of Andrew Crow.
Yeah.
I never got to have a meaningful long conversation that got in the way of other meetings with Megan.
Sure.
And I just got to say hi to Pete Zielinski.
Sure.
Julia Heider and Stephanie Hendrickson in passing, but we didn't get a chance to stop and actually say, what was the most exciting thing you saw there. But that's what these are for.
One fun thing was we were on the main stage from Tuesday to Saturday. So
that was really fun.
That was a lot of fun. And it was a new experience being in front of everyone. It was a great
experience.
Bright lights.
Yeah.
Sweating like nobody's business.
Being on a huge platform with nobody to filter you. That is a power. That's a good feeling.
That first day was over intoxicating.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. I'm surprised I haven't gotten a reprimand for that yet. But you know what?
People are on vacation. Just wait.
Yeah. If I keep talking about it, they're going to go back and look.
Go back.
So I better stop.
Well, my goal is there's a bunch of holidays and vacations are coming up. So my goal is to kind of repackage our IMTS time or on stage recordings and probably package that into something for the holidays. So keep an eye out for the end of year holidays, whatever holidays you have. They'll probably package up during then. So
sweet.
It's going to be fun. Steve, you want to tell us about our sponsor?
Our sponsor today is IMTS Plus, the people behind technology, the stories driving the future of manufacturing, the thought leaders and people like us creating the products, the opportunities, and solving the challenges of our industry. Explore a new digital destination designed for manufacturing technology community where you can watch, read, learn, join, and connect. Go to IMTS.com to cure your postpartum IMTS depression.
Good segue, Steve. I appreciate that.
You bet.
So since we're talking about IMTS, I thought it'd be useful just to recap what our highlights were on the technology side. But I was using the framework of article from IMTS Plus where it talks about 8 key takeaways from 2022.
Yes.
So the first one is we saw automation everywhere.
Yes.
I think that's solid.
It is an absolute takeaway. Automation was everywhere. To be fair, that's nothing new. Because IMTS 2018, 4 years ago, automation was also everywhere.
True.
However, 2018, automation was at the beginning of its surplus. Mm-hmm. I predicted in 2018 that the cost of automation would go down.
Right.
And it certainly did. I was right about that. Yes. I called that. I'm so proud of it. But what I never expected was... And I want to discuss this with you.
Yeah.
Do you think that cobots are becoming obsolete? Because in 2018, cobots were all the rage.
Right.
Fast forward to 2022, we just came from IMTS. There were still a lot of cobots there, and more companies providing cobots than ever before. However, we saw some really disruptive technology in automation,
We did.
which I was wrong about, by the way, because back in 2018, I did say that robots are going to become more plentiful. There's going to be a surplus. They're going to go down in price. But really, the technical innovations aren't going to keep up.
Right.
Man, was I wrong. And thankfully, because we saw a lot of, unsafeguarded industrial robots.
Right.
And that brings up my concern to, like, are cobots obsolete already? Because, one of the companies that we saw that we can't stop blabbing about with one of the greatest booth designs ever, VO Robotics, totally empty booth.
Right.
Just nice plush carpet and people to talk to. And the only things in their booth was this big screen on the backdrop, a big, 60-inch, 65, 70-inch television screen. And in front of that screen was an industrial robot swinging around at full industrial speeds, like well exceeding 15 newtons of force, and no safeguarding in sight.
Right.
The safeguarding was hidden up top in, like, the gantry, the catwalks of the booth.
Right.
And it was what I assume LiDAR, and it mapped, you could see on the screen everywhere there was a soft target in range, and every time a soft target got within range of the industrial robot, it came to a screeching halt.
Right.
Not literally a screeching halt, but it came to a complete stop. And it was incredible. I had never seen anything like that before. We've known this is possible, but we didn't know you could cross these bounds.
Right.
So going back to my original question, seeing this done with an industrial robot,
Right.
do you think cobots are obsolete?
So,
And this is a huge discussion, by the way, on LinkedIn.
oh, interesting.
There's a lot of people out there that, like, talk ill of cobots.
Right.
So what do you think, Ben?
So there's a couple of layers to that, right? So the shift from active safeguarding, where you have fences and restraints to keep people away from it, to passive. That one booth we saw showed a very cool demonstrator of that.
Yeah.
And one other thing, so it also detected humans, but also I talked to the people in the booth a little bit, and what they're also looking at is the future point cloud of the robot itself. So at a specific pose, what are all the potential future poses of that? And it puts a future cloud on the robot.
That's what, like, that yellow cone was.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't a cone. It was like a hemisphere.
Hemisphere, right.
Okay.
So as you approach it from, say, the backside, you can approach it closer because the future cloud is further away from you. But if that future cloud gets close to you, then it turns off, or it pauses the robot. So, and that's a key element, right? It pauses it. So it's actually interrupting the path programming.
Right.
And it says pause, and then once you're clear of that, and it allows you to resume. So that's the current implementation of it. There's another booth where they're using, I think they're using probably sonar or some other type of passive technology to slow then stop the robot. So as you're getting closer to the robot, then it turns it off.
Saw that a lot at Yaskawa.
Yeah.
You saw a lot of implementations of that, not just at the Fanuc booth, but at other booths with Fanuc bots.
And we've seen that in the past in just automation in general, where you use a series of light curtains. So as you get closer to either conveyors or other pieces of automation equipment, it'll start slowing down the equipment. And the logic is fairly solid, right? As you cross certain light curtains, it slows it down till you hit the last one, then it turns it off. So the question of, are cobots becoming obsolete? I would say in automation, it's very use case dependent. So the nice thing about cobots is the ability to teach on the fly. So you can still operate a cobot in a very, very safe manner, manually moving around. So you can teach it by pushing it to the pose and then using the teach pendant to say pose 1, linear, rotational, whatever, and then you can build your series of the program that way. So if you're doing like a high mix, low volume scenario, so you're constantly changing part numbers, changing orientation, I think that's a great scenario for more towards cobots.
Right.
If you're in the scenario where you need access to stuff around the robot, so maybe in a scenario like palletizing, right? That could be a scenario where you're constantly moving stuff out, where it makes sense to have passive scenarios, but also the speed of the industrial robots versus the cobot. And that's where I think the advantage is, right? The speed of industrial robots is higher, but I'm not constantly interacting with the robot.
Right.
So I think that's a scenario where you'll probably see more segregation of, am I interacting with the robot? Or there's also a collaborative assist scenario. So one of the booths showed, they had a collaborative robot where they're working on a bicycle, and it would change the orientation of the bicycle so it was ergonomically correct to the operator. So if you imagine working on transmission or a larger factory where it's supporting the object so you're not bending over, or if you're getting an ergonomic position to bring in a tool over, that's another scenario where a cobot is probably going to be safer than an industrial robot.
Right. I would love to see an auto mechanic like doing not an engine swap, but like an engine out operation on a car, and the cobot is lifting the engine for the mechanic. But at the same time, a cobot by law and standard can't exceed 15 newtons.
Right.
That engine pull, like pulling that engine, would be so slow.
Right.
Because that's a heavy lunk of metal.
Yeah.
Moving to not exceed 15 newtons of force. That's moving slow.
Right. Or the other scenario is if you're working on the top of the car, right? So you have to take off, say, like the valve cover.
Yeah.
Or something heavy, right? The valve cover is not super heavy, but it's kind of awkward, right? Having that assist pull off that stuff where you're reaching over, and instead of pulling the 3 pounds of object, you have the robot supporting you.
It'd be so cool to see a mechanic working with a robot like that.
That'd be cool. So I think the collaborative assist is you're probably going to see more of that.
And I guess the answer to the question is the same as every other answer, which is it depends on the application. Because you wouldn't if you would want to use a collaborative robot would be obsolete and unnecessary in a nearly total lights out lean manufacturing application where there's barely any humans in sight. You don't even need the lights on. Yeah, don't use a cobot.
Right.
But if there's a ton of humans around and you need the assistance of a strong robot arm, you want cobot.
Yeah. So the next bullet we have is everything is connected.
Yes.
Which I thought is, and then back to your point earlier about automation, it's continuing the connectivity, right? We saw that in the last show, but now we're seeing a significant more interconnection of all the connected applications, but also a drive towards standards, right? So it was a matter of are they using MP Connect to connect to drive data? And most of the time was yes, right?
Right.
So
and the standards really make everything easy, which is good for the handful of facilities that I've visited just this year alone that are incredibly advanced technology or advanced facilities, like with high-end machine tools. And the big thing that they're pushing for, the next piece of technology they're looking to acquire is a network to connect it all.
That's cool.
And fortunately, those standards are already in place and in use at other facilities, so they've been tested.
Nice.
And they're in a good opportunity. Now they just need a good developer to put it all together for them, and hopefully they have a good IT department.
Definitely. The next bullet, I'm probably going to jump around a little bit because the next one is ease of use is a growing priority.
Yes, ease of use. I know I keep harping on it, but I saw that the most. Well, with how far automation has come, machine tools have gotten a little bit better. I'll come back to them. But automation, like a lot of our colleagues, who are new to the manufacturing industry, came to me and be like, "Hey, when are you free? Because I want you to take me around the show and show me what's cool." And Mo and I actually went to the Student Summit together. Cool. I made it to Friday without having seen the Student Summit, maybe even Saturday. Don't tell Greg. Without having seen the Student Summit. And I finally got to go down there. Kristen, her husband, Mo, and I think Chris Downs too, went to the Student Summit together. I hadn't yet seen it. Mo hadn't yet seen it yet. We went to the FANUC booth because, of course, they had multiple booths. We went to the FANUC booth down in the Student Summit. Okay. Straight up taught Mo, within 15 minutes, how to operate a Cobot arm, an advanced, top dollar collaborative robot arm. Yep. And it really is that easy. Not to say that, Mo's dumb, because she is not. But but it's the Student Summit. They're also getting middle schoolers, maybe even elementary schoolers learned on programming a FANUC Cobot. So yeah, have they gotten easier? Absolutely. But to harp back on, traditional CNC machine tools, who else was down there? Doosan, well, their new name, DN, which means Doosan now.
Right.
And what's the other word?
I think that's it.
If you saw a brand at IMTS that had like this Panther logo, and you're like, how did this new company get this huge booth spot at IMTS where there's like all the big booths are taken by like, manufacturing industry veteran companies? This new company is actually Doosan, but they changed their name to DN Solutions.
Yes,
I
DN
think
Solutions.
that's it.
That's what it was.
DN Solutions was also in the Student Summit,
Yep.
showing how easy it was to run their machine. Their machines aren't as easy to run as like, collaborative robots, but really easy to run for 5-axis CNC machines. But going back to one of my favorite brands, Penta Machine, formerly known as Pocket NC,
Which we have
they
here.
have come so far.
Right.
Like, to cough, looking like they had like a Windows 95, 98 Mitsubishi controller.
Right.
Which, don't get me wrong, it works.
Right.
And, it's standardized. Like, in the industry, you should know how that works, just like you should know how to operate a Bridgeport.
Yep.
It's that old school Minesweeper looking controller. But now, like, machine tool controllers are so easy to use, and you don't need somebody there to teach you. I set up the new Pocket NC. It helps that this is our second one, so I've operated one before. But the UI, the HMI is totally new on the new one.
Yep.
And I only looked at like the getting started guide
Sure.
to physically set up the machine,
Right.
to make sure everything was plugged in properly. And I used it only to get to the web browser and to refer to what the correct IP address to the machine was so I could connect to it. Once I was connected and I got the notification on a web-based controller that it was connected to the machine, it was totally self-explanatory.
Right.
And I knew exactly what to do from there, and it was really easy to operate the machine. And it shows, and it's really cool that a bunch of companies are investing in this easy to use layout, this
Right.
UI, this user interface for future operators. They're actively trying to close the skills gap.
Yep.
Like, it's not just a student summit thing anymore. The industry's actually trying to do this, which is such a beautiful thing to see. Like, they're actively making things easier. It's easier to get into the manufacturing industry now as like an individual worker.
Yep.
I mean, Penta, I know I keep hyping them up, but I love that their UI designer came from Pixar.
That's cool.
He worked on the fireworks scene in the movie Madagascar. Like, he knows how to make things look pretty.
Right.
And pretty to the point that anybody could figure out how to use a 5-axis CNC machine.
That's impressive.
It's so cool.
That's cool. And I think that's the big takeaway across the board is that, the scenario we were programming the Cobot, and also, the shift with Pocket NC to Penta and their interface, the machine, human to machine, the HMIs interfaces have come a long way.
They've come so far.
It's a lot more intuitive. So, not only are machine tools or subtractive equipment using like G-code to get the actual path of the stuff, but the interface on top of that, that's what's probably changing the most, right?
Yeah.
So instead of flooding the user to go to G-code right away, providing a layer that allows for that, kind
Right.
of middle ground interpretation helps a lot.
And I want to give a little bit of that credit to the additive industry.
Sure.
Because you look at a lot of these additive machines, and sure, nobody's like manually doing additive, or else that would be just welding.
Right.
But you look at a lot of industrial 3D printers.
Yep.
They're all touchscreens. There's
Sure.
not a button in sight. The ones that know what they're doing and actually want to be industrial have an e-stop button.
Right.
But everything else is on a touchscreen. That actually disappointed me. As much as I love Formlabs,
Right.
I think it was Jake Nectarlane. He did show me or point out. I think he pointed out to me that Formlabs doesn't have an e-stop on their machines.
Oh, that's interesting.
But you know what? You're not going to be in there anyway. Like if you have the door open to the point where you can get hurt,
Right. It's not gonna run.
it's not going to be moving.
Yeah.
And it's all lights and lasers anyway.
Is that what the definition of industrial equipment? An e-stop?
It got to have an e-stop. A big, like serious, scary looking red button with a yellow trim around it.
We have the sit-standing desks, and the ones we have are motorized. I think I'll make mine industrial by putting an emergency stop on it.
It should have a foot pedal.
A
foot pedal e-stop.
Or the two-handed operation, so you have to push both controllers.
Have launch keys?
Okay. Steve, I think the last one we want to talk about is Faber Sonic. You got an article from...
Okay. Faber Sonic came out with a press release recently, but nobody's written an article on it yet. But I wanted to talk about Faber Sonic because what's really cool about them, they're an additive company.
Yep.
Well, excuse me. They're a hybrid additive company.
Okay.
So additive and subtractive technology. But they are different because they use ultrasonic sound waves to fuse sheets of metal together.
Yep.
One thing that's tough to do and not commonly done in additive is printing pure copper.
Sure.
Faber Sonic's one of the companies that can do it.
That's cool.
They take pure copper sheets.
Right.
They can ultrasonic fuse them together.
Yep.
I don't want to say weld, but they fuse the sheets together, and if you want any, design, you need any intricate, pathways, what have you, that can be subtractively removed layer by layer as the layers are added.
Right.
But what's really cool is I remember one of the very impressive companies that I saw at my first IMTS in 2016 was Acoustex.
Right.
A spindle company, and it's tough to find them on the web now, but there were a spindle company that vibrated, if I remember correctly, they vibrated at an ultrasonic frequency the spindle head to evaporate any coolant or debris.
Oh, sure.
As it's cutting.
Right.
To extend tool life, cutting tool life. The patent holder behind that ultrasonic frequency technology for Acoustex back in the day is the same guy that holds the patent for the guys and girls at Faber Sonic.
Nice.
And it was really cool to see that, how my most recent, it's easy to go back to 2018, see what's happened then, but like being able to link all of my IMTSs, so many IMTSs back to each other.
Yeah, right.
And that was just fun.
That's cool. And I do like the ability. So
yes, I know where you're going. Their ability to print PCBs,
right?
Like actually use additive manufacturing in its entirety.
Yep.
To make a PCB, not like print a few layers, then stop. Somebody comes in and installs like the wiring loom or harness or whatever. It does it in one shot.
Yep.
It can do it in one shot, and because of it's a hybrid technology, you can make a PCB, which just sounds a little weird, but you can print a PCB entirely out of metal.
Right.
Like you can have your insulatory layers in there, but it is what is essentially a metal, PCB board,
right?
Computer board.
Yep.
And that was just wild to me.
Yeah, that is. So
and they make really pretty parts. Like they're subtractive. Not gonna lie, their subtractive technology, really good surface finish.
I like
that. Swiss watch quality.
That's
very
what
pleased with it.
And that's a big takeaway for me is that, getting the mixed materials. I did find an article that we're running low on time is printed circuit boards, but the idea of modifying the circuit board so not everything's 90 degrees, which is kind of the current fabrication method, to allowing the board go like 45 degrees as you grow it. So I do like the concept of mixed materials, and if you look at a lot of assemblies, there's always a mixed material scenario, right? It's rarely one material. That's the big advantage of additive also is putting the right material where you need it. So if you have an abrasive section or a section that's constantly in contact, make that harder than the rest of everything else, right? So that's a fascinating use case, and I like where they're headed with that, and wish them luck. That's gonna be cool in the future.
Dude, they're gonna be awesome.
Where can people find more info about us, Steve?
AMTonline.org/resources. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.